Hey everybody, welcome to Not Up for Debate. We're here with Randy, Damien, and we have our friend Julian. Julian's been a friend of ours for a few years now. Welcome, Julian. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Julian.
Good.
Hey, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah. Thank you for being
Appreciate
here.
it.
We're meeting.
Loving the cast. I really am.
Yes.
That you're doing some good materials. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're meeting with Julian today. Obviously, just to discuss his beliefs, but we're kind of taking it a step out of the ordinary today, and we're going to talk about aliens and the supernatural, and kind of talk about what Julian's thoughts are on that. Maybe get a little bit of Damien and Randy's thoughts a little bit too, but it'll be fun to talk about.
I have to say, man, I'm excited about this one, Julian. So I'm ready to talk about this.
Yeah, I love the discussions that you guys have been having. I think they're very thought provoking, and hopefully nobody attacks anybody on what everybody believes is what everybody believes. I mean, it's just but to have alternate viewpoints, I think, is important, and fun discussions. Yeah,
absolutely.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. And Randy, I think you at one point said that Julian had like a poster or something like that in his cubicle at work. That's how Julian and Randy and I know each other. We used to work together. So
I've been outed.
Yeah.
So when we used to work together, I was a big fan of this show, Ancient Aliens. I didn't know if I necessarily believed everything, but some of it's like the things that make you go,
Mm-hmm.
And then I would walk by Julian's desk, and you would have different artwork and different pieces from different cultures and their ancient astronaut or alien. At least that's how I looked at it, because that's the show I was used to watching.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really intriguing to me. And I would actually stop at your desk and just kind of look around at different things that you had. I'd take the time to check it out. So when Damien told me you were coming on the show, I was like, oh, are we going to be talking about this? And he was like, oh, I don't know what we're going to be talking about. So anyway, yeah, I'm really excited for it.
Yeah.
Well, that actually started more too as an Egyptian kind of a theme, is what I've always been kind of just fascinated by it. I still don't think they know what the pyramids were really for myself. I mean, I don't feel like they're tombs, because I think that the what do they call it? The Valley of the Kings or something like that. That seems to be where all of the real tombs are. I don't think they know the function of it yet. Now, is it all the way over into Ancient Aliens where it's a power plant, or I don't know. I've heard all kinds of theories. I don't know. But it's possible even that those were maybe even there before Egyptians. Maybe they came into it. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. And I've seen a couple of videos lately on that.
Do you want to kind of just, I guess, start with a brief introduction of yourself, Julian, who you are, and I guess what your beliefs on the universe are, or what, kind of go from the light stuff to the heavier stuff, I suppose?
Sure. Well, I'm Julian, and I actually have had a variety of jobs, but what I love to do is photography, and right now it's been aimed more at wedding photography, so that's what I do. But I always have a day job, so to speak, to make sure that there's food on the table and stuff. In Idaho, it tends to freeze up a little, no pun intended, in the winter, so I've always made sure that the family's covered with that. I guess beliefs-wise, if you're talking about more religion or just something deeper, that I'm actually a UU, which is Unitarian Universalist. That's the fellowship that I joined, like, I don't know, in 07 or 08. I kind of hate labels about this particular religion, because I feel like everybody's on their own spiritual journey or path, as I like to call it, and each person could be different. Even if they're Christian and they even go to the same church, they could both be on diverging paths. So I kind of, sometimes people like to put themselves in camps. You know what I mean? Same thing happens for politics, which we won't touch. That'll be a third rail. But I like things that are like true and provable, and so it's really hard to prove some of these things. So when somebody says, "Well, I just believe it," to me, you just got to kind of leave it there, because you're not going to be able to take it into, like, a lot of these shows. They want scientific proof that they're going to be able to test and retest, and I got to admit, using the scientific method, that would be the way to do it. But obviously, you can't really do that with faith. So I think that each person should just kind of take that and do as it may. I was raised, though, in more of a non-religious household, I guess I would call it. I did attend private school, which surprises a lot of people, private Christian school from about third grade until about maybe halfway through eighth, going into high school type time. And I was saved, quote unquote, a few times in there. But I got to admit, I never really felt like everybody said that I should be feeling a certain way, but I never did. I never felt like, anything that moved me in that way, or the voice of God, or whatever you want to call it. I never felt like anybody had talked to me. I just felt like everybody else felt like I should feel that way. So I kind of did. And asking questions was a big no-no in these things. They always would come up with, well, God's ways are much bigger than ours, or you just got to believe. And that was really tough for me as I grew into middle school and was asking these questions. And I didn't really feel like I got good answers. So I kind of got disillusioned with it and never really came back to it until I came up here into Idaho, and then my wife started attending this UU. I won't call it a church; it's more of a fellowship, Fellowship of the Rings. But they don't like the word church because there's a lot of people that go there that are not. They came from all different kinds of backgrounds,
right.
And they all are kind of disillusioned with their particular religions and go here just because it's more like-minded people. So that's why maybe church isn't the right moniker for it. But I did like it because I actually sat in the back the very first time I was there. I loved what everybody was saying. It was all about, loving your fellow human being and treating everybody with respect. And there was just a lot of things that I felt that I would just do, religious or not. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I actually sat next to a guy when we did the little introductions, or introduce yourself to the next person. And he is an atheist. And I'm like, what are you doing here? Kind of thing. Like, because I didn't know even where I was yet. Right. And he goes, oh, these people are very comforting to be here. It's like-minded people. And I love coming here. Right. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What's funny about that, Julian, is I Googled Unitarian Universalists when you said, what you looked at. And Google comes up with their questions, their follow-up questions. The first question was, can Unitarians be atheists? That's just ironic that was the first thing that you brought up.
Yeah. It surprised me, Randy. It really did. It to me, somebody that's, and again, with the labels, because to me, even atheist is a weird label in general, like to me, because if somebody's not a carpenter, you don't call them, a non-carpenter, or you know what I mean? I just
it makes me non a lot of things.
That's what I mean. It would make us non a lot of things. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So even that name, so to speak, is kind of, but I'm more from the agnostic-y, I guess, sort of maybe atheist camp, in the sense of I just don't know, so I'm not going to pretend to know, I guess, is my take. And I'm certainly not going to judge anybody on whatever they feel. If they are feeling something that I didn't feel, more power to them.
Right. That's the perfect thing for our show, man. That's exactly where we are.
Absolutely. Kind of open-mindedness. Yeah.
I had never heard of the Unitarian Universalists, to be honest with you.
Neither had I.
I'd only heard of it from Julian. So
yeah, and they.
How did you stumble onto that?
Well, my wife was looking for places to fellowship at when we first moved here, and I was not interested at all. I'll be quite honest. Wasn't interested in the least bit. And then after she had gone there a few times, she had said, these people, these might be your peeps. Like, I'm telling you, these sermons, if you even want to call them that, are very minded towards, again, treating people with respect, loving your neighbor, all these different things that are being inclusive. And it was such I don't even want to call it a melting pot of people, but I guess that's the best term, is just so many different people from so many different religions. Although I have not met a person that used to be Buddhist that has gone there. That's the only thing I haven't met. Interesting. But everybody else seems to be represented there from all the different religions.
I should visit one here. Awesome. Yeah, I should visit one here in San Antonio so that I can find some more guests for the show.
I was going to say, something that group here.
Yeah, exactly.
They tend to be very open-minded, and they're very, just kind, as far as I'm concerned, at least here in the Treasure Valley. So I can't imagine. It seems like everywhere that people have gone from the fellowship and they've gone to, let's say, to someplace in, Kentucky or whatever. It seems like UU seems the same everywhere you go,
Cool.
meaning they've attended services there on a Sunday because they happen to be visiting their kids or something, and it seems to be the same.
Yeah.
Like eating at McDonald's, right? It's the same in California as the same as in New York,
Yeah. I'm glad that you have that available, even as a unsure believer, whatever you would, again, labels. It's nice that you have somewhere that you can feel comfortable and at home. Like, life is stressful enough. It's nice that you have a safe haven sort of in community for yourself. So that's really that's great. What were you going to say?
But but it is a God based
that's a good
type
question.
thing. Or?
I guess I would argue that each person, again, is on their own belief on how. I'll bet you if you talk to one person, like literally went in there right afterwards and you were talking after, after it was over, if you talk to one person and went right to another person, they'd have two completely different God type beliefs. If we're gonna say it like that, you know what I mean? Like two different ones. So each person is getting out of what is said as best they can and moving on. I mean, that's the kind of. It's really kind of like, I guess, after, for instance, when marriage equality came up and it was legalized for gay marriage to be legal throughout the entire United States, the entire congregation, if you want to call them that, stood up and clapped, and there were tears and people are hugging, because there's a lot of people like that there that feel like they've been kicked out of every other church or frowned on at every other church, and this is like a safe haven for a few people like that. And it just, I mean, I've never seen anything like that. That really got me to my core, I got to admit. Because would they have been braced at an evangelical church in Appalachia? Not. Probably not. Yeah. No. They would have been horrified probably. Right. It just, and to me, it's just the difference of, again, treating people as you'd want to be treated, as treat your neighbor as your neighbor.
Right. So it's almost like the commonality amongst everybody there is the humanitarianism.
Yeah.
The big word.
Because I guess it comes from two different, I don't know the big history of it, and I encourage people to read it on Wikipedia or something, where I know Unitarian used to be its own and the Universalist used to be its own. And apparently a lot of our founding fathers used to be one or the other. Okay. I didn't know that. They were kind of deists, I guess. Huh. And so Thomas Jefferson wrote his own Bible.
Oh,
I mean, he took out all the miracles, and he took out all the stuff that was supernatural, I guess I'll call it, and it just boiled down to me, just boiled the sugar out of it, and decided to make it more, like readable, like a story that was a normal story that people didn't have to. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now I gotta look it up and thriftbooks.com. Here I come. I don't
love thrift books.
I think didn't they find that years after his death, Julian in his desk or something like that.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know how it was found, but I think, but it is written in his own hand.
Is it not something I could buy right now then, or it's not a?
No. I'm sure it's been reprinted.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Like it's not just one copy sitting in a museum somewhere.
Well, I'm sure that copy probably is sitting over at his old home or something. Sure. But yeah. But
that's cool.
It's more of like just being a force for good there, and and I have to admit, like they call them plate partners, where basically 25% of whatever you donate to the church is going to this, and it tends to be like homeless shelters and people getting to eat food. Imagine that, just stuff like that, and that's really that's definitely my vibe.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That I haven't heard of it up until today, this moment. Yeah. I talked about the Google. So one of the questions that popped up was, do you Unitarian Universalists believe in heaven? And I like this. It says some believe in heaven. Few probably believe in hell, except for the hell that people create for themselves. And
I can see that.
I can too. That's something I think I've talked about that on the show. Yeah. That I can see hell being what because I think it was in the book of Thomas, or the Gospel according to Thomas, where Jesus had talked about heaven is here now. Right. And on the flip side, you can see, well, if heaven's here now, I can see hell being here now. And I can also see people that are literally in hell as we walk around this earth. There's some people. And then I think it was Holly's episode, because she's like, you can almost see people that kind of go back and forth too.
Yeah.
They kind of, so
People do create a hell for themselves, so to speak. And I think when people are ruining, for instance, like the environment and the heaven, if you want to call it that we have here on Earth. I mean, if there was this historical Jesus and he came back, I mean, he would go like, "Wait, I told you guys this was heaven. What happened?
Right.
What are you guys doing?"
I had a private conversation with actually a previous guest of ours, but we were chatting about the God of the Bible, of the Old Testament, and how typically atheists think that the God of the Old Bible or the Old Testament seems to be actually evil. Like he seems like a very angry God. And this friend of mine is like a very humanitarian, very loves nature, loves animals, and so she's like, well, yeah, if I created this beautiful Earth and humanity destroyed it, I'd be pissed off too. So I was like, that's a great point. So, and she's not Christian or anything, so I just thought it was really funny. She doesn't really, she's not in the Christian beliefs, but she's like, I can understand why that God would be angry. So it's kind of like, I think that goes along with what you were just saying, Julian.
Well, and as if you split the Bible into the two pieces, you're right. I mean, the Old Testament, at least as far as I read it, and believe me, I got, prizes in the Christian school for learning all these different verses and stuff. And I remember specifically thinking that, because my mom was an English teacher, so we learned a lot of like Greek mythology and, the Roman gods and things of that nature. And so I saw parallels with the Old Testament God actually, very clear to the Greek gods, meaning that, the Greek gods, they never pretended that they didn't have human traits. They were jealous of people. They had affairs, all these kind of things. So when I see that, God's a loving God, and then the next thing you know, he's flooding the entire earth and killing everybody,
right?
Because he was mad about something that he created. It makes me go like, like I'm not seeing I can actually almost believe the Greek gods a little more, because that's right. I mean, doesn't like being jealous seem like such a petty human trait? I mean, I mean, all of us fight to not be jealous of things.
Right. I've thought that many times. And the older I get, and the more, I don't want to use the word tolerant, but the more you understand people's emotions, the harder it is for me to believe of God being jealous or those type of emotions. It really, I struggled with that. And it's interesting you brought that up, because that's something I've talked about many times, not on the show, but just in life, that, because I mean, you can, right now, Damien, if your kids go and have a mental breakdown, you're going to look at it from your 29-year-old self. You know what I'm saying? You're going to look at it from, you're not looking at it from your 3-year-old self or your 5-year-old like they are. You're looking at it with hopefully a little compassion and understanding. And then if you're 60 years old and your grandkid has that same breakdown, I'm sure you're going to look at it from even different perspective at that point. So it's like we, as we get older, we start understanding the way things work a little bit more, hopefully. And so then when I think of the ultimate, God, I have a real hard time seeing him having like a short temper or something. And
I also can't see when people say, this loving God sending people to eternal damnation for something that he knew, that he created. And if he's all knowing and all loving and all seeing, he knew that you would not be convinced by whatever evidence he's left on this earth. So it's almost like he planned that you were going to go to hell. I can't see a real loving God doing that. That's why I have a problem with people with that. And the New Testament, by the way, is full of great stuff of Jesus's teachings, and that's way more along, I think, the vibe that most people would want to be, and emulate. Taking in the prostitute, which of course the Pharisees hated, right? All the different stuff, feeding the poor. These are all traits I think that all of us would love to be like. Whereas the Old Testament God, I don't know. I just, which of course they're the same person, which is right. I mean, depending on your faith, it just seems odd to me that they such a juxtaposition between the two.
One thing that you brought up, that Julian specifically, that I struggle with as a Christian, and it's something, and it's probably because of my background, from my LDS history background, is in the LDS belief system, there is almost like a second chance. Like, right, you get spirit prison, Basically, it's like it's kind of like the sort of similar to Catholicism and their purgatory, yeah, where you kind of get like this second chance to be taught like the gospel after, like in Mormonism, after you die. If you haven't learned the Mormon gospel, then you get to learn it in spirit prison, being taught by those who are in
Sounds fun.
Spirit paradise. Yeah, sounds fun.
Sounds like a party.
And then yes, exactly. Sounds like a good old time. No, that's okay. No, but it's like a more for sure way of like God saying, "Hey, this is the right way. Choosing to following me this way, or go to hell." Like literally, literally. And so that's one thing as a Christian that I have a really hard time even buying now. Is like, really, like there's no like there like we have up to 100 years to figure it out. And like in the grand scheme of eternity, that's not a lot of time, and it doesn't seem. And I might get a lot of flack for this from other Christians, but that doesn't seem like a just God to me. So I have a very hard time. I mean, people will be will even say like my grandma died and now she's in hell because she never. And I'm like, good Lord, like and I'm sitting next to my. And I don't believe in works, right? I believe in Jesus Christ's grace. I believe in I believe doing good works is a good thing, but I don't believe you're saved by your works, right? So, but I know plenty of Mormons and otherwise. Julian, you're someone that's not even necessarily doesn't have a label, doesn't have isn't a believer, that I believe is a very good person, and I'm like, I just don't see how the justice in sending that person to hell when it hasn't been a for sure, like, hey, like, I mean, if we could have that for sure moment, if Jesus came down and was like, Julian, here I am, I'm your God, like that would be a different circumstance than like kind of guessing, you know what I mean? Kind of, that's what we're believing. As you said, is like, that's anyway. I was sitting next to my mom, who is LDS, and she's spent the last 2 months serving my family, being here for helping us with our medical conditions, and I'm like, I would hate for anybody to be like, my mom died and now she's in hell because she didn't accept Jesus because she's Mormon, and I'm like, that's like, so I feel like that's so I don't know if ignorant is the right word, but I just. But unfair,
cruel,
unjust,
really. I mean,
cruel.
if you think about it, I don't. That's why I can't.
I do struggle with that.
That's why I can't
much.
buy into those things. Yeah. And it's funny that you said the 100 years thing, because I mean, assuming somebody's going to live 100 years, that's probably rare. But I mean, what about the kid that dies at 8 and gets hit by a car? Right. They're doomed to hell because they just happen to not hear the word of God. I can't buy it. And that's actually why. And I forget what religion. Forgive me, but the reincarnation, myth that comes along there, that actually makes more sense to me. Like, hey, Julian didn't learn his lesson. We're going to send him back another time, and then you keep doing it until all of a sudden you learn your lesson. That actually makes more sense. It actually could make a good movie too. Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no. Reincarnation is.
I think it was called Groundhog's Day, just to be honest.
Groundhog's Day.
That's awesome. That's freaking funny.
Groundhog Day, path to hell.
Yeah. God damn. That's awesome.
I just watched that again on Groundhog's Day.
I was going to say our 51st Dates, but that's not really the same thing. That's not the same. Yeah. Not the same situation. I love that movie though.
That was hell. To be honest.
That would be hell. That would be hell.
Imagine waking up every day and not knowing.
Have you seen the videos where people have actually done? I guess mathematicians have done the math, and that actually went on for like 100 years or something or whatever.
Oh, Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The movie Groundhog Day. They'd done the math on how long it would have taken him to learn piano, how all the different like things, and it added up to like a long time.
Dang. Yeah. I think they asked Ivan Reitman, I believe that was the director of it, and I think he said they were basing it in their minds on about 30 years. that he was stuck there. But I have heard that in order for him to get all those skills and to know everything, that it would have been about 100 years. Yeah.
Because to play piano the way he did, right? I mean, his lesson was that morning, and then that night he's playing in a concert, and
then he's got the ice sculpture.
Oh my! That's what I'm saying. It's like the skill alone. They added that up, and it was a lot of time. I forget. There's an interesting YouTube video somewhere about that, and I remember thinking that's kind of cool.
You know what's also interesting, and maybe that wasn't even the first movie that was like that subject, but you think of movies like A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens, right? 8 billion movies have copied that format, or books, whatever. But Groundhog's Day is one of them. I've seen so many movies that copy that type of format. Like, I think even on Hulu, there had Palm Springs. Did you guys see that? Had Andy Samberg and Christy Milotti, I believe her name is, where they were living the same day over and over and over. But Andy Samberg had already been he was at a party, and there was like this cave they went into, that you went into, and that's what made you go back into the life. Well, she followed him. She saw him. He was trying to hook up with her one night, and she followed him into this cave, and he told her not to go into it. She did. So then she was also stuck in that loop, and she got all pissed off at him for leading him, even though he tried to stop her. But my point is, I've seen a lot of movies that copy that same format, and there's not a lot of stories, I think, that are that iconic that people create movies to be like those movies over and over. But those two stand out to me with that concept, It's really interesting.
Yeah,
that sounds like the Time Trap or something. Have you seen that one on Netflix? Where
I have not.
Where somebody goes into a cave, and then the minute they go in, they look back, and once you cross a certain threshold, you look back, and all of a sudden, it's almost like somebody's flashing a light on and off, and that's the days going by.
Okay.
And I think it was called Time Trap or something like that. But everybody inside, depending on how deep you go, you're moving a little slower or a little faster. It's kind of trippy, and you're stuck. You're stuck there. I'm probably getting the name of the movie wrong, but I'll try to.
I'll have to Google it. Netflix it.
Yeah, I think it was Netflix, and time. Yeah,
interesting.
Huh?
Yeah, the idea of, and Randy knows this, but the idea of reincarnation fascinates me, man. Like, it really fascinates me. So I'm glad that you brought that up. That's almost like more believable than
and a good segue for that is. It's been argued that energy doesn't go away. I think scientifically they said that energy doesn't go away. So if you're going to argue that your soul is energy, then it makes sense that it has to go somewhere and do something. So to argue maybe somebody doesn't want to go do something, so maybe now they're stuck wherever they died or something, then you've kind of maybe transitioned into what people here would call a ghost or a spirit or an entity of some sort. Or maybe you do go to the light or whatever, and maybe you get recycled. Obviously nobody has come back to tell us what the journey's like. And so we don't know.
Right. That is a good segue, though. Let's hop into the after we spent a good half hour talking about but that was good talk so far. I every like minute I'm like, could probably do an episode on that. Probably could do an episode on that.
making notes.
But yeah, let's talk about what are your thoughts on I guess first aliens and then and like supernatural, Julian?
Well, I'll take aliens first, at least in the sense of, is there a probability that there's life in this universe? Sure. I think the numbers and the math just, speak to that very likely. Have they visited Earth? I don't know. It seems like almost, if you go back in the past, when everybody was still shooting, say, film cameras, and I'm taking it from a photography standpoint, it seems like it was ubiquitous, right? Everybody had a picture of a fuzzy alien craft or something, right? Now everybody's got a phone in their pocket that does amazing video and photos, and we get nothing. All of a sudden it's like a blackout here.
And everybody has one, and it's probably 1,000 times better as far as the picture than
the resolution and stuff. Absolutely. That's why. Why did it suddenly drop off? Because something that did increase with that is, like, for instance, police being filmed. Now all of a sudden everyone's saying, well, that's a problem because the police are suddenly doing this. Maybe they've been doing it all along and they just weren't getting filmed.
Right.
So now I have to apply that to aliens in the sense of, like, are these craft just stopped coming, or or because, like I said, if Barney and Betty Hill would have had an iPhone in their pocket, imagine what theirs would have captured. Supposedly, if anybody doesn't know, I was
going to say that was a deep cut right there, Julian. You might want to explain that one.
I don't know the whole story, but I know that they claim to have been captured driving on a lonely road. I forget what state they were in, and captured. And then they had a time loss of some sort where all of a sudden they just woke up in their car, 4 hours later, 5 hours later, something like that. And I believe that they feel like they've been experimented on, I think is the term. I can't remember if it came out during hypnosis or, that's the thing too, is aliens, man. I mean, everything's, you're getting probed by aliens, and it just seems so, I don't know. I just if they're really doing that, then they're like a mean kid on an anthill, just burning everybody up with their magnifying glass. Well, I mean, and that's why I say, is there anything that specifically tells me that aliens have been here, type of thing? Probably not, in the sense of like when we look down at an anthill, which is a good way to look at it. Are we really that fascinated with them? Will we study them for a little bit and then walk away? We're not really going to do anything to change their life unless you're a mean kid and you ruin their little anthill or something for a while. But I mean, maybe we're just so far above intelligence-wise. Why would you even bother trying to say communicate with them or whatever? If you're really this alien species that has been around for probably technology-wise, if you're arguing maybe a million years advanced of us. I mean, think about how we've advanced in the last 20 years. Think about where we'll be in a million years. Why bother talking to a bunch of people that are still fighting each other with, weapons down on this planet? You know what I mean? It just seems to me like maybe they would just observe. If they are here, maybe just observe and kind of back off. I don't know.
Yeah. They definitely could, and I definitely want to dig more into this, but we need to take a break. Sure. So we're going to take a quick break, and then when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the aliens and our views on that. So
excellent.
Stay tuned, guys.
Hey, Randy, have you ever had crack and cheese?
Well, I've had one of those. I'll let you guess which one.
Combine them, man. Just like Satisfied Food Truck did to create their delicious crack and cheese dinner. It's a handcrafted 3-cheese macaroni with buttery panko, or what they call a hood rat crumble, on top. I love the hood rat crumble.
Oh man, that sounds delicious.
Yeah, chasing it down with their Gingosaurus punch is the next step to a perfect dinner. And if you don't go for the crack and cheese, then go for the basic bird slider. I love me a good mini burger.
I mean, why not get both?
Exactly. Order the whole food truck.
How do I find them?
They're in the San Antonio area. Look up Satisfied on Facebook or at satisfied.sa on Instagram. Also, they do catering. Visit their catering website at enzosce.com. That's ENZOSCE.com.
Awesome. I'll tell them Damien sent me.
Hey, Randy, you remember how excited I was when I bought my house here in San Antonio?
Oh, yeah, man. You were pretty excited.
You know the one thing I didn't like?
That you were 2,000 miles away from the blue field?
The fence, Randy. The fence.
Oh.
Yeah, it was one windstorm from blowing over. That is until I was introduced to Van and Sons Fencing. Mark was able to meet with me right away and give me free quotes on different variations of how to build our fence. I eventually went with cedar pickets, treated 2x4s, and metal posts that were able to withstand winds of 120 miles per hour.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And you need that with the storms you get down there.
Right. And a year later, I'm still happy with the beautiful sturdy fence and the 2 gates that Van and Sons built for us. Mark, the owner, is actually a neighbor of mine, and he's done several fences in our neighborhood, and I can tell that they have integrity with each job. They don't cut corners, and they offer fair prices. They'll price match other reputable fence companies, too.
Well, if I get my act together and actually move to San Antonio, I'll have to hit up Van and Sons Fencing. Are they on social media?
Of course. Check out Van and Sons Fencing on Facebook. They have plenty of great pictures of their craftsmanship. And when you're ready, you can message them directly on Messenger or call or text Mark directly at 210-944-9238. Oh, and remember, fences make great neighbors. All right, everybody, welcome back to Not Up for Debate. Thanks for taking that break with us. We still have Julian here. We're talking about aliens, talking about the supernatural. And we kind of left off on aliens there. And so, Julian, my next question would be, I know we don't know, or you're not so sure that they've contacted us or come into Earth, or, we're not sure about that.
Or do we?
Or do we? Exactly. Yeah, or do maybe the three of us know something. No. What would, do you think, first of all, does the government know, like have an official answer? Like, do you think they would hide that from us, I suppose? NASA and the government, you think they would hide it from us?
I do. And the reason why is that it's not an anti-government stance. I think it's literally just to, for instance, if this alien technology came and crash landed here and it was way more advanced than we have, and I know this gets said a lot in Ancient Aliens as well too, the show, is why would you not try to reverse engineer that so you can be technologically advanced on our planet, and then you can dominate the planet, kind of like how the U.S. has. So I don't want to take away from human ingenuity. I think that that's amazing, but if there was aliens that actually did come here or crash land or whatever it is, I do think the government, especially the larger ones around, would absolutely cover it up so that they could figure out the technology part. I think it's more of a nefarious way going that way, just to keep it all secret and compartmentalized. And these kind of things have slipped out. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Bob Lazar, who supposedly worked at the Area 51. I was going to bring that
up, actually. Yeah.
No, can you explain that a little bit?
So Bob Lazar was somebody I think that worked at what everybody now knows as Area 51 in an area called S4, which is Site 4. It's off. I guess it's a few miles from the main site, and his department supposedly was reverse engineering, and he in theory saw alien craft, several of them, some in more damaged aspects than others, were totally flyable, so to speak. And I think even at one point he said that he actually saw an alien creature or something that resembled one. He couldn't tell if it was like almost what we would call a flight dummy or something like that, or if it was an actual alien, but it was definitely this little thing, I guess, or something. So, and the guy's a smart guy. If you Google him and see some of his interviews, he's actually very smart, but he's got quite a story. And I got to admit, it is hard to believe it sometimes, because you think there's no way our government would do this to us or whatever. But you know
what's interesting to me, Julian, because I watched him on Joe Rogan a couple times, and he had that Jeremy guy, I forgot his last name, with him. Do you know what I'm talking about? Who I'm talking about?
I think I know who you're talking about.
He's the one that all this new footage that's been coming out. He's the one that's kind of like seemed to be spearheading it. He's always there. But the take that I got, I actually believed Bob Lazar, but he meaning the Jeremy guy, he felt there was just something about him where it felt almost publicity stunt type thing on the Jeremy part. But the Bob Lazar part, I felt like he felt really genuine to me. Some of the stuff is hard to take for sure, like you said. You're like, I don't know, but some of it's really interesting. And from what I understand, like some people are like, the amount of information he had, he probably, it seems like he almost had to have worked there, because I know he talked about also staying outside of Area 51. They would try to film at night or something like that.
Right.
I don't know.
That's how he got in trouble, apparently.
Yeah.
How he got in trouble was he thought I guess his wife, there's some convoluted story about it, something about his wife was having an affair, but he didn't know it. But apparently when you work there, everything about you is like tapped, like your phones and all that, and so they knew his wife was having an affair, so they just assumed that he would be vulnerable. And somehow this led to him leading other people to go see test flights, I guess, of whatever this reverse engineered stuff was that was amazing. And they got film of it, and I guess that's how he got in trouble, and he went public supposedly so he wouldn't be killed. He says he did it so that he wouldn't just accidentally die. It would be too public if he went public.
That was my next question, is like, how's he still around? Like, that's a terrible question.
Probably why. Yeah. If it's to believe, that's why he never really could answer some questions. Like they would ask him questions that I know that you guys have been interested to, like, are they here to harm us? Do they hate us? That kind of. And I don't know that he ever answered those kind of things. I personally think that if aliens were here to harm us, that they already would have, honestly. I mean, if they've really visited past, in the past, like what Ancient Aliens says they've obviously done stuff to push humanity forward according to that timeline and story. So I mean, if they were going to come here and like whatever War of the Worlds us, I would have thought they would have already done it. The interesting part that I've always took from that show in general is I think they call it culture cult culture or something, or food, it's basically it's a new type of a culture that is created when something like that happened. Like, in other words, like, because Ancient Aliens has always said like that they advanced us forward and gave us all the scientific knowledge and everything too. This has actually happened a lot of time. A lot of people don't realize this in recent times, as early as late as I guess I should say World War II, when we were island hopping, trying to get towards Japan. We were landing our very modern, aircraft on little islands and creating little airstrips and stuff. And I guess there were native peoples there that had never seen anything like our technology. And to appease them, we gave them food, like corned beef hash, cans of corned beef hash, and everything, rations and stuff to help them move equipment. Well, when we left, meaning the United States left there, they created a religion around our aircraft.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And they made effigies of something that looked like an airplane. They prayed to it. They said one day they will return, because they said, and we became their gods, kind of, in a weird way. Yeah, look that up. It's very bizarre. And they just created a whole religion kind of thing around it. That's why when somebody has an idea that these aliens came down supposedly, right, and whatever, gave us knowledge or gave us whatever, I can see where they would, right, there's a lot of stories, they will return one day, and that's what a lot of our religions and our deities and our religions say, Jesus will return one day. So wouldn't it be hilarious if like an alien landed on the White House front lawn and said, Jesus, I'm back, and he's an alien, and then he's all, what have you guys been doing? Boy, did you guys mess up my message. I said to love each other and hug each other, and then everyone... See, and that's why I think another reason why governments would not really tell us about aliens in general, I think that they know that even knowledge of them would probably collapse the world religions if we found out that not only is there life out in the universe, but if they were the people that came and told us, hey, be kind to each other, it would just everything would collapse.
Right.
See, and I've heard that, and I'm not even arguing the point because we don't do that on this show, but I always looked at it from my own perspective. Like, the first thing my mind, and maybe it's because I grew up as a believer, the first thing that popped in my head was I would just believe that God created those aliens too. Like I think even on Ancient Aliens, the guy who wrote Chariots, Eric von
Doniken.
Yeah. I think even he said that that he believes in God, but he didn't believe in the God that they were teaching him when he was in the school. I think he was in a religious school.
He was.
And
he had to actually convert text from the original languages over, and that's why he started seeing the conversions. If you read Chariot of the Gods, he was seeing that the conversions that we get have been unfortunately distilled by man, and that's the problem, right? You insert man into the issue of interpretation, because some of the words don't match, so you have to kind of find the best word, and that's where he started. If you ever read Chariot of the Gods, he asks tons of questions in there. And by the way, he was vehemently attacked about that book, but it set off a whole string of everything for years and years and years, controversy because of that. He's just going, are these the gods that we're worshiping? Are they, because all of these other religions thought that they were the gods and they would return too. And then now here we are in modern day and we have just a new set, essentially.
Yeah. So I have not read the book.
It's very good. It's a short read too. Chariots of the Gods.
And who's the author?
Yeah.
Eric von Doniken.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll definitely put a link to that on our website.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to check it out. That is something I've wanted to read. I just haven't. I can see the cover in my head. Yeah. So it is a short read then.
It is. It's a very small. I remember reading it as a middle schooler, I believe. I think it came out in like the late 70s or something. I remember reading it as a middle schooler, and just it was fascinating. And I loved that he was asking questions that provoked thought. It wasn't really anything big. It did lead me down a rabbit hole of other stuff. I think I ended up reading like Whitney Schreiber. Is that how you say his name? Communion, and
I'm not familiar
he had a couple of different books. Now, one of his books is called Majestic, and I highly recommend that. That has more to do with the reverse engineering part of the alien story, so to speak. It is. I think it is written as not true, so to speak. But a lot of the aspects in there are little stories that have leaked out over the years, and I think he just kind of combined them into a readable story. But it is fascinating, meaning like entering the craft itself, turned into this anti-gravity, which a lot of people figure that an alien craft, if it exists, is. And it actually was a time displacement. Like he had gone into the craft at one point, the protagonist in the story, and they'd yelled, "Are you okay in there?" And he said, "Yes, don't come in," because he was just fascinated by the technology that was in there. And when he came out, it was nighttime, and they were really mad at him because he had been in there for like 9 hours or 10 hours, and he felt like it had been just like literally walked in, looked around, and walked out.
Oh, so it was a fictional story.
Yeah. It's
okay.
It's written that way, but when you read it, you can tell that there's a lot of parallels to what people are talking about,
Right.
especially in the ancient aliens type of culture. Ancient alien, people say yes.
Right. Oh, I felt that way. I recently just read Tommy Knockers by Stephen King. Have you ever read that?
Oh, yeah.
And it kind of reminded me a couple of the things you were talking about. And the book's older than most of the people probably listening to this, but I don't want to spoil things. I'll just go ahead and spoilers coming. So it was interesting how he was saying that, and I'm not even through the book 100%. I'm like 95% of the way through the book. But how he was saying that the aliens that were on board were just like the grunts. I don't know if you remember right, and they were almost like slaves on the ship. That even though they had this technology, they would fight with each other, and that's why they crashed, because they were fighting or something. I don't know. It was just kind of interesting. Yeah.
A question that always comes up again, like what we touched on earlier, was, are these aliens here? If they are coming here, are they out to get us and stuff, or are they going to take over the planet? And there's actually a really interesting book that I'm reading right now from Arthur C. Clarke. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he wrote a lot of science fiction back in the day, and he's a very smart scientist. He used to do a lot of shows and guests on shows about science and interesting people, but back in the 50s and 60s. I think he wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey, I think.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
But his other book that I'm reading right now is called Childhood's End, and it actually is exactly about what happens when the aliens come. They have this advanced technology, and they basically take over the planet, but in a good way. They cause peace to be out throughout. They make it to where stealing, there's a big disincentive to steal, not necessarily death, but nobody does it anymore, and what that's like. Mm-hmm. And I'm about halfway through that one. Very interesting take on what life would be like. They call the aliens the overlords. And it's very, very interesting. There's only one human that goes up and talks to them and brings down the rules. And there's a major ship above every city to show their dominance, so to speak. They say, like, at any moment we could do something, but we're not going to, because we're peaceful. They cure diseases, and it's talking about how generations and generations are built on these aliens just being the overlords, and how it becomes more natural that they're there. It's quite fascinating. I haven't edited it yet, but it's a really neat take, written in like 1952 or 1953.
Right. Yeah, that'd be a really interesting one. I'd be interested in reading that one.
Yeah, we'll have to check that out. Also, on your cubicle, you had the Anunnaki all over. Was that because it sounds like you were very interested in this, but you don't necessarily know if you think it's happened? Like,
well, I do take an agnostic stance to it, because I haven't, I guess if I personally experienced it, I might have at least an anecdotal thing to it. But it is fascinating to me that they captured these people in drawings or writings for some reason. Like if you had never written anything down before, and then you decide to write something down, what are you going to write down? You're going to write down the most important stuff that's going on. Right. I got to imagine that there's not a Stephen King in there that's plowing out 50 books a day, writing about a whole bunch of fictional stuff. They're writing about what's going on at that moment of that day. So they're talking about these Anunnaki who have come down from the stars, and it's fascinating in the sense of, like, why would they have written about that?
Can you explain a little bit more about what
I was going to say? I'm sure Damien isn't wearing, probably some people listening.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even know if I'm super well versed on them, but I believe they're Sumerian or something. Or they come from that. I think they come from that kind of breadbasket of where modern day, like, Iraq is, and it's one of the first cultures that supposedly did farming and so on and so forth. But they always said that this knowledge came from the ones that came down from heaven, or the stars, however you want to say it, I guess. And there's many drawings and many, I should say, I guess, carvings and reliefs of these creatures. And I have to admit, some of the Ancient Aliens show takes it to where, like, I don't know what they're doing on this particular picture that Randy's talking about. They do appear to be plucking or taking things on and off of this. I don't even know what to call it. Just kind of a spindle. It almost looks like DNA, the way it's kind of like a vine growing or something like that. And I know some people have taken it to where that's them, basically using the modern day CRISPR tool to cut DNA out and enter it in and create beings and stuff. And I don't know about that, but it is fascinating. Like, why would they capture this? It was important enough for somebody to sit there and take weeks to carve this thing. So what is that?
I'm gonna share that image. Sure. This right here, Damien. Can you see?
Yep.
When I click in it, it takes me to the web page. So I don't want to do that.
So the one just below that is the one that I know that the one literally just below the one that you have highlighted. No, it's like almost like a dragon-looking thing with wings right there, because they were the winged ones. Because
this right here?
Yeah, because they could fly. Mesopotamia, yeah. Right there. Yeah. And that's what they said was their gods. And they apparently gave them wings because, I assume because they could fly, or they imagined that they could fly. I mean, that's the only way that you would... How would you draw somebody and describe how they fly? Even if they didn't have wings, how would you describe that unless you gave them wings? See what I mean?
So you're
Damien,
saying...
another thing, look at the watch. I know you're about to talk there. Almost all these Anunnakis had like it looked almost like a watch.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, what is that? And so those are drawings, obviously before watches were a thing, right? I mean,
well, no, we're talking about the beginning of cultures coming together and actually farming in communities.
And
this is
actually
really
communicating through writing and
right.
And art.
And they did, I think, they did some kind of writing. Is it cuneiform? Is that how you say it? Gosh, I hope I'm not butchering that. Where they do it in little clay tablets, and they do all these lines. It almost looks like binary code to me a little bit. I mean, but they have figured out a way to read it, and they talk about their god or gods a lot.
And so what you're saying, Julian, is that why they probably wouldn't have such an emphasis on these particular drawings and writings if it wasn't something that was going on for them, or at least a heavy belief of theirs, or
right,
okay,
or important to them in some way, right? I mean, and they claim that all their knowledge of farming and all these different things came from them. Like in other words, they're not even claiming these gifts are something that they invented. They said that these are gifts. I don't know why you wouldn't give yourself credit and give it to some made up thing if it really wasn't true. I guess. I mean, I
do want to point out, guys, here, if you look at the bottom of this cuneiform tablet, the 208 from Idaho, that's our area code here.
208 Potato State.
208 Potato State. I love that.
Anyways, yeah, so there's a lot of interesting things. Damien, I know you have never watched an episode of Ancient Aliens.
I did watch.
Oh, did you watch?
Dude, and Randy, I gotta bring this up real quick. That Patty and I, this was like probably, I mean, several months, like just a few months.
Oh, yeah, after, you messaged me.
Yeah, a few months after I got baptized in my evangelical church. My wife was still was LDS still, and I was leaving Mormonism. So it was kind of funny that I think it's either the first or second episode. We watched one or two episodes, but one of the very first ones that we watched was talked about how Moroni, which is an LDS prophet in the Book of Mormon, came and supposedly came and visited Joseph Smith, and how was Moroni from a different planet? They kind of dived into that, and Patty and I were both like
ancient alien theorists say yes.
Yeah, Patty and I were both like, what the hell? We both hadn't. We're like, oh, we were not expecting. I told her, I swear to God, I didn't even know that was going to be. I had no idea this was going to be. Yeah. We both thought it was funny, though. We were like, what? We hadn't heard that theory before. So
yeah, there's a reason why that meme is so famous from the Ancient Aliens. And I forget the guy's name, but he's got the big hair, and it says, I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. Because everything
points to it.
And I take his point a lot of times, for instance, if all of these things are true and the aliens came down and they're coming down at a time when we are barely at the beginnings of, farming, or, we don't even know where lightning comes from, this kind of thing. would it be plausible that we would misunderstand technology? If you took an iPhone back even to somebody in the 1880s, you'd probably be burned as a heretic. I mean, because it just seems magical to them, and maybe that's their point. So the problem and the good thing about Ancient Aliens, why it makes it so intriguing, is if it does seem like logic could be plausible. It's just unfortunately, to me at least, the evidence isn't like really super clear.
Right.
It's just not there.
What I love to sorry, Damien or Julian didn't.
I was just going to say same for the supernatural, meaning like ghosts and stuff. It's just that I just need that evidence piece to be a little stronger, and it's just
great spoilers. So now we know your answer before we get to it. No, I'm just kidding.
and I've had I have an anecdotal story of ghosts. I'm sure everybody has had certain things. Now I'll say my most recent one, honestly, was when I had first moved here to Idaho, and I had an experience. I'm not going to describe the whole thing because it was kind of odd, but as I looked it up, it turned out it was sleep paralysis, which is something that is pretty common. But it did feel like I was being held down by an entity. If I would have never known about sleep paralysis, I would have swore that somebody was holding me down and not letting me up, essentially.
You're gonna have to give us more, Julian. Explain the situation.
Okay, I fell asleep after I used to work overnights, and I was very, very tired, and I slept during the day, so I was a day sleeper essentially. And at one point, I felt like I don't know if I was asleep and then I kind of woke up, but whatever it was, I felt something down by my feet, meaning like the cat jumping up on the bed or just something like that. And then I realized that we don't have a cat. So that was disconcerting.
So that was concerning.
But the thing is I let this thing, whatever, about the weight of what I would consider a cat too, by the way. I was still laying down, but I couldn't move, but I wasn't panicked not moving. I just was wondering, like, what is that? I felt it kind of crawl up around my butt area. I was laying on my chest. And then I felt it go on the lower part of my back, and then it started kind of like holding down my wrists, and I started freaking out because I wanted up. And then I'm not joking. I still will swear that I heard this as a whisper in my ear on this side, and it was just so very low. It's like when somebody speaks so low, they're just a little out of hearing, just a little bit, but it was definitely feminine, at least to me, and it was about a sentence's worth, maybe
hold on.
6
Before
to 8
you continue,
words. Yeah,
did this woman? Did she sound Asian at all? And I know it sounds. I'll explain. But anyways, go ahead.
No, it didn't sound well. No, it was just a woman's voice, but again, it was slightly out of hearing. But I could tell it was like a feminine voice, at least in my mind. Okay, and it was almost because I was asking to be let go, and then somebody whispered or something whispered, whatever, and then in my mind I was like, oh my God, am I communicating with? I started like waking up more and realizing, am I communicating with something supernatural? Whatever it is, still didn't let up. So I said, well, if you're not going to talk to me, let me go. And then immediately I was able to move, and the whole paralysis was released, so to speak. Again, I even asked doctors about this. I mean, I was really seriously disturbed by this. But if you look up sleep paralysis, that almost everything that I described fits in there. It goes back to the time when we were, in trees, and if you fell down, there was a whole lot of teeth that were going to eat you below the tree, and it causes the body to, as you're waking up, still not move, so that you don't make a sudden movement and fall out of a tree type of thing. I guess it was very odd.
That is interesting, and the reason why I even brought up
what's with the Asian thing?
So I don't know if it was actually Asian, but I've had twice, and it was the same lady. I tend to sleep on my stomach on my side, and I've had twice where I've had someone, I can feel the fingers on my back pushing me, saying, hey, wake up. Hey, wake up. And then I wake up. They weren't holding me down. They were trying to wake me up. And it scared the what out of me. Like, what? Why am I again waking up? Like, why? But it was literally like someone was there. And I woke up to look behind me, at this person, but the lady had a very Asian sounding voice, very soft. That's why I asked if she was Asian. I was like, is it the same lady? Is she visiting both of us?
The Idaho
anyways,
something or other.
Yeah, Idaho, the one that likes to wake us up. But and I know that probably sounds bad, but that's the voice I heard would sound like someone.
I don't think it sounds
if
bad.
that's what it is,
that sounded from Asian descent. But it was very soft. Actually, it was very comforting. It was almost.
I was just going to say that mine comforted me when I heard it. I was panicking. Not being let up because again I'm on my chest and my head's to the side and it almost felt like the pressure was on my wrists too, by the way. And like somebody sitting on my back and then holding my wrist down, if you can picture that. And then all of a sudden somebody let me up, and after I heard the voice and I said, well, if you're not going to blah 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 let me go, then it was like I gotta admit it was a thing.
Interesting.
Kind of weird.
So
that is really interesting.
I have a it's not really my story, but it's my aunt's story, and I think it happened to her. I think it happened at least twice, but we lived in a small town, Burbank, Washington, and she was asleep in her bed. And I don't think anything physical, like I don't think there's anything holding her down or even, not even touching her. I'm not sure, but she said that she was laying in her bed asleep, and all of a sudden, I think there was like, I don't know if it was a physical presence or just like a dark presence or whatever, but she felt, or she heard like a male voice in her ear, like right next to her ear. And she was like, I think she was laying on her back and right next to her ear. And it was like, and it was not comforting. It was like evil gibberish is what she said. She's like, I didn't understand what he was saying, but I could tell that he was pissed off and evil. And like, and that's what, and she felt like she couldn't move, but I don't think it was because someone was physically, I think she was just struck, like, oh my God. And then from what I understand is after the second or third time it happened, she like commanded it in the name of Jesus to leave her home. And she didn't experience it after that. But I was living with her at the time that happened. And so I was like, this is nice. But then like that house was weird.
Is that a confession? It was really you?
Yeah, no.
You should have filmed it and pranked her. You'd have the TikTok of a lifetime
she
right
would
there.
have had no hesitation and beaten my ass if I tried that. She wouldn't have been scared, that's for sure. But at the same house, I'll try to make this quick. At the same house, I swear this is the weirdest thing ever. My uncle worked nights at the time, and it was just him and I in the house. He was asleep in his room, and I was in my bedroom. And I'm the only one that has witness to this, and that drives me nuts. But I heard like a car crash, like that was outside the house, and I heard someone yell "help!" like "help!" And I was like, "Oh shh!" So I like booked it outside, and there was nothing. There was no activity like in the front of our street or down the street, and it's easy to see down the street both ways. And then I was like, there's no, what the hell? Like I was freaking out. I was like, what in the frick was that? I was like, was it on a TV? There was no TV. There was no radio on. I checked in my uncle's room to see if there was any, if he was okay, if there was any TV on in there. No, he was asleep. Anyway, it freaked me out.
So besides that, it could be a dream, obviously, but I mean, meaning, our subconscious does these things as well too. But this is the part that leads back to our leftover energy part when we were talking about is, are we as human beings feeling some leftover, like that's terrible energy, right? Being in a car crash, dying and saying help. Right. Did that happen in the intersection outside your house, like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago or something? Right. And for some reason that energy gets replayed, because a lot of people, when they go into, say, what they consider a haunted house, or they go on these ghost adventure things, which again, dubious on some, but fascinating on other takes, is a lot of them describe the same, like this woman will come down the stairwell and she'll walk into the kitchen and it's almost like it's on repeat, right? It's almost like a film that's just in a loop. So is that energy, maybe she got in a really bad fight with her husband and she was mad, and there's this mad energy or something that's like left over for us to see 50, 60, 80, 100 years later. I mean, that's the part that fascinates me if the energy part is true.
It's interesting you bring that up, and we do need to go to another break, but one of my ex-girlfriends, there's a place in Twin Falls, before you get into Twin Falls, Idaho, there's basically an 8-mile road that leads to the town. It's not right on the freeway. But there's a little offshoot area. I think it's called like Devil's Canyon or something like that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. Yeah. But it's like there's like a little
Lucifer's play place.
But so the local kids would go, go walk around this area, and she said, and I had never heard it before at the time, this was going back quite a ways, that there was a energy, if you will, that she saw on loop of, it was this man shooting this little girl, and she said it just kept playing over and over. Randy, she said it was like a TV show or a movie that you could watch it, you could see it happening, but you knew it wasn't happening in real life. It was spiritual almost, but it was like a loop. It just kept repeating over and over. So it was interesting you brought that up, Julian.
Yeah.
And then but Damien, on your thing, like the car crash thing, there was one time, because I live with my dad, and he's an elderly, I'm 45, so you guys can do the math. But there was a morning I had gotten up to use the restroom, and I heard him yell for me to come help him, and on his end of the house. So it's like 40, 50 feet from where I was. I heard him yelling, "Randy." So I go out of the bathroom. So I'd already been awake a little bit to use the restroom. I go out of the bathroom and I'm like, "Dad, you all right?" And then my dad was like, "What?" And he was in the kitchen that I'm walking by. And I was like, "You just yelled for help." He's like, "No, I didn't." I swear I heard his voice.
Jeez.
Yelling for help, but it wasn't. So that always made me think of parallel universes. I never thought about the residual energy thing.
I never thought about either one of those things, but now I'm fascinated. I'm gonna have to be chewing on that for like the next year.
I mean, because when you and I am fascinated by the ghost shows in general. I'll be honest. Same as I do with Ancient Aliens. I'll watch them, but I take them with a grain of salt. Like I do anything. But it is fascinating when they talk about certain repeating type of hauntings, right? Like I said, the woman down the staircase type of things, where it just feels like you're watching a film on loop that different people get to watch. But then when they talk about the interactions ones, those are the ones that, to me, I don't know. Is that left over somebody that maybe had something to complete? Because I got to admit, I've had some health diagnosis where I was diabetes type 2 and some other stuff that just made me feel my mortality a little bit. And I kept thinking well, if I died right now, I would feel pretty like I wasn't finished. I have to admit. I mean, I got a lot of stuff to do. I got a lot of editing to do.
Right there
photos.
with you.
No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, I would feel. I got to admit, I would feel incomplete. Would that be enough to keep me around and in a particular place? I don't know. I mean, it's just if does a sudden death make it to if somebody dies suddenly and they feel like maybe they don't even know they're dead?
Right. They got ripped off, no closure.
Yeah, I mean, a very I forget what is that, the Nicole Kidman movie with The Others, The
Others, that was so good.
I don't want to spoil it for anybody. If you haven't seen that movie, definitely watch that. Oh my God, to the bone. Yeah. All
right, so we're going to go ahead and take another quick break, and then we'll be back to finish up our conversation with Julian.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, Randy from the podcast here. As you might have known, I'm actually a realtor in the Boise, Idaho mountain home area with Next Home Treasure Valley. If you are looking to move to this area, let me know. Send me a message, and I'd like to help you out.
Yeah, and I can vouch for Randy's real estate expertise. I lived in Boise, Caldwell, for 7 years, and he was ready to sell my house when I was ready to move for work purposes. Love the area. I 100% recommend that area as well. And Randy was right on the ball.
Thanks, Damien, man. I appreciate it. So if you go to YouTube at Randy W Real Estate, that'll take you to my videos, or you can just email me at randy@randywrealestate.com, and we can get the ball rolling. So let me know if there's anything you need. And thanks, Damien. Thank you, guys.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Not Up for Debate podcast. Thanks for hanging in there during our break. Got Randy and Julian and of course, myself, Damien, still talking about ghosts and the supernatural. We kind of moved from religion to aliens to supernatural. So it's been a fun...
We covered the gamut today.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a fun episode. So, Julian, thanks for hanging in there with us. And
no problem.
All over this place. But so we kind of left off talking about supernatural, talking about ghosts, joking about The Others.
Yeah.
So...
And
Such
the energy...
a good movie.
The energy, it really is a good movie if you haven't seen it, everybody. I'm serious.
Agreed.
I mean, that one, we won't spoil it. But it's got an amazing dark energy to it, and it really does suck you into it. You feel like you're right there. And there's not a lot of movies that do that.
And there's not a lot of people I feel talk about that movie. Like I'll talk about the others, and they're like, I have never seen it. I'm shocked you've seen it, Damien, just to be honest with you, man.
Yeah, it's like a cast of there's only 6 or 7 principal people in the whole thing, too. So really there's a lot of storyline built around these particular people. So I remember one of the questions you asked early on in the prep for this as well, Damien, was if I had any experience with the supernatural, personally. And of course, I already told you the one that as an adult I remember. Yeah. Now, okay, I'm going to tell you one when I was 3, but I don't remember this. My family tells me this, okay. and it's across the board family, and all of those stories do sync up. Unfortunately, I never really got to dig deep with my mom. My mom's already passed away. She would be a principal person in this, but everybody else that was there seems to be on the same page, so to speak. So the short story is I was actually born in the United States, but my first 3 years of my life, I was immediately taken to Germany, where my dad had a scholarship, like a pretty unique scholarship to go study abroad, and we were in Germany at the time, which was just actually it was West Germany at the time, not a unified yet. No Berlin Wall down, obviously. This is 1969, and so for reasons we won't get into, my mom and my sister and I came back, and in '72. And we stayed with my grandmother on my dad's side in a little house in Norwalk, California. It was right just adjacent to Cerritos College, right there in the back parking lot of it. I believe the street's name was Alora. I won't give you the address because I don't want people disturbing the current resident. But they always felt beforehand that there was an entity there, a female entity of some sort that they couldn't put a finger on. Doors left open, just all kinds of weird stuff going on. So to the point where one of my aunts felt uncomfortable even being in the house alone. And so she, for instance, she got dropped off with a friend one time, and because she knew that nobody was home yet, she just sat down on the porch and then waved her friend goodbye. Her friend drove off, no big deal. Well, they're talking on the phone, I think, later that night and saying, hey, how come you didn't go into the house? And she goes, well, nobody was home yet, and I don't really like to go in when you're alone. And she goes, what are you talking about? Your mom was in the window right behind you. And she's like, what? And then she goes, no, nobody was home. She goes, yeah, no, she was there. That's who I was waving to. There was, and then that creeped my aunt out horribly.
And she's the one that's already freaking out about it.
So in '72, when we came back, they told my mother about this entity, and they actually had told my dad as well too. And my dad said, hey, could you not tell the kids? Because I was 3. My sister's 7 years older than me. It'll just freak them out. Don't tell them anything about this entity or whatever you guys believe in. No big deal. Well, they told my mom. And in 1972, apparently it was really fascinating to let's have a seance and burn candles. And so after the kids, meaning my sister and I, had gone to bed in this house, I don't know what they did. Oh, great spirit, or whatever you would do in 72 to feel like you're going to talk to somebody. Well, nothing really happened for them. No big deal. So they ended whatever they were doing and decided to, I think it was my aunt, the one I was describing, was actually pregnant with her first. And she went down the hallway to the bathroom and used it. And as she was coming back down, she was checking up on us sleeping. And she said that my 3-year-old self was straight up in bed, sitting up on the edge of the bed, straight up, wide awake. And she asked me what's going on. And I start rapping to her because I only knew German. I only knew German at the time. And then I remember her thinking, this is how she tells me, is that, why would I don't know why I thought I could communicate with him. I don't know German, so let me go get his mom. So my mom came in, and then I start, talking to her very rapidly. And they said that my mom went ashen, they were she was I didn't even know he knew that word. And they were what word? And he said Geist, that's ghost. That's ghost in German. He said he saw a ghost. And a 3-year-old's not going to lie, right? I mean, I don't think. And so then they really drilled down and were trying to get me to give more details about what it was. And I said it was a woman, and that she was walking back and forth on the green grass, meaning in the hallway. And I don't know why the green grass, but apparently she had green shag carpeting from the 70s, out
okay,
in the
I wondered.
hallway. So maybe I just didn't have a better word for it in German, or I don't know what. But I said that she was walking back and forth on the green grass, back and forth, back and forth. And that pretty much freaked them out a little bit. And then they said, well, what were you telling your aunt when she came in the room? And then again, 3-year-old me said, well, it was standing behind her and I thought it would kill her.
Oh, wow.
Oh my god.
So my aunt absolutely lost her collective mind and was very freaked out about this because, again, a 3-year-old's just going to tell if you're fat. Your 3-year-old's going to tell you you're fat.
Right.
If, you know what I mean? They're very honest. Yep. They just say what it is. So I don't know if this is necessarily true, but they had all kinds of things in that house happen that could be somebody just left the door open and maybe that's why the back door was open, but that was a constant one. For instance, their back door to the backyard was constantly open. Everybody claimed they locked it, but you know what? I tell my teens to do stuff and they don't do it. So I don't know. Yeah. But that's the one thing that I was involved in. But again, I only know this story through secondhand. So I don't know how true it is, but it is fascinating to me that could happen. And again, I emphasize the 3-year-olds usually pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right.
Hey, I have a random question. I mean, it's not totally random, but it's kind of off subject. Do you still speak? Do you speak German now?
I know a few words, but I couldn't be even conversational. Okay. I might know how to ask for the bathroom or order a Coke, or something.
I did not know. I didn't know that you were that you lived in Germany. I mean, I know that's a young age.
I lost it, I think, because I was so young. Remember how many words like a 3-year-old knows? So that's what I knew approximately in German. Right. And apparently I did know a few English words because I remember my dad saying one time, because they were trying to teach me German first and then English later but it got truncated.
You're going to be immersed into English anyway. So yeah.
Right. And so, but he wanted me to learn German first. But I remember a story my dad told me when we were still in Germany. He said, "Where's your mother?" in German, and I answered back. I just pointed and said "kitchen," which is not the German word for kitchen. And he's like, "God dang it! How did he know an English word?" So he was trying to. Right. Both of my parents. My dad's a linguist and teaches or did teach. He was retired now. He taught English to Germans there at a place called the Volkshochschule, and then my mom is an English teacher here in the United States. So obviously that was a big part of our growing up.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay.
Now my sister, who was 7 years older, she had full immersion in the German schools, and she did retain a lot of the German and ended up being like the German teacher here in the United States pet, because she just knew German really well, obviously.
Very cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Damien, before I think we were off camera when you were talking about your mom's glasses.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were just saying that you guys looked for them?
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell us.
Yeah, so this is just kind of, I was somewhat joking. And I don't know if these are them, but so my mom has been here for 2 months. She just left on Wednesday, but she had been here for 2 months to help my family while I was recovering from my medical situation. And anyway, while she was here, she lost her glasses. We thought that maybe my daughter, my 2-year-old, accidentally threw them away or hid them somewhere that are never to be found again. And anyway, I just walked by the bookshelf and I'm like, are these the glasses? And we've been at that bookshelf a million times. It's right next to my office.
Right.
And so I pass by it every single day. And so I'm like, are these them? Or like,
I don't want to say it's aliens, but
it's probably aliens.
It's probably. I don't want to say it's aliens, but yeah.
Well,
bring back the meme. Yeah.
So what was interesting about that is my mom, before she passed, well, after high school, not too long after, my class ring, the little, they have those little symbols on the side. Well, one of them came loose and she's like, honey, why don't you give me your ring? I'll get it fixed. And then before it falls off, otherwise we'll lose it, whatever. Fast forward 20 years. My mom still had never gotten this ring fixed. She couldn't find it. She looked all over for it. She couldn't find the ring. Anyways, when she passed away, we went through all their stuff, as you do, making sure that everyone got whatever. Still didn't find anything. And my dad he thought he had his wedding ring stolen, his old wedding ring, so they had gotten a new one. Well, about a year after my mom passed away, I had gone into my dad's room. I was looking for something, and right in the drawer, I pulled up the drawer. there was like this jewelry box thing that she had. I opened the drawer, and sure enough, sitting right there is my class ring right next to my dad's wedding ring. Like clear as day, like you couldn't have missed it. And I mean, we had people. It wasn't just me looking through. There was multiple people looking through this stuff, trying to, go through everything. And yet it was just right there. Right. And your story about your mom's glasses just totally pulled that up right now. Just totally, it was just crazy.
And just,
there's that old saying, it's always the last place you look, but then I always thought that, was saying was silly, because of course it's the last place you look.
Why would I keep looking after that? Yeah.
It's always the last place you look.
No kidding. Just to be clear, I have not even had the opportunity to ask my wife. Hey,
to find out if those are.
If it's my mom, and if my wife found them and put them there or something. But
it's a better story if we don't ask.
Yep, exactly. Just let the mystery be there. Yep.
What was the saying? Don't ever let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah. There you go.
Have you guys ever considered going? I know there's local people, at least in Idaho, here for Randy, and then if we ever get Damien back to Idaho, we can do that as well. But I'm sure
I forgot you don't live in Idaho.
There's Texas. I'm sure, like ghost hunters, like actually going on one of these type of things to see if you can experience anything. Have you ever considered anything like that?
I thought about doing the penitentiary when they do that one.
Oh yeah.
But I didn't do it. Have you done any of those?
I haven't done that particular. I mean, I've been at the penitentiary. I've never really felt anything. Okay. You increase the likelihood of the creep factor if you do it at night and on Halloween or something.
Right. And for those of you that don't know, Idaho has this. Well, Boise has this old penitentiary they used to house, dangerous criminals, whatever. And it's now been what do you call it? Not declassified, but commissioned. But so they'll do tours of this old prison, and it went. What was it about the early 1800s, right? Isn't it, or mid 1800s?
Well, into the 1900s, they were still, executing people there. Even I guess.
Right. You can see the gallows pole, or not gallows pole, but the gallows.
And now that's done at your house, right,
there.
Julian?
Yeah.
Now the executions are done at your house now.
But
go ahead.
From what I understand, it closed in the 70s after the conditions there. It's a very old prison, so the conditions were just no air conditioning. I mean, it was just hot as Hades in there, during the summer, and people just thought it was inhumane.
It was just decommissioned in the 70s?
I think it was the 70s.
So much more recent than I was.
But during the executions, now it's a nice little garden area, but apparently that's where they used to, build a gallows or something, outside. And I've read some contemporary articles at the time where they would advertise it in the local paper, and people would make picnic baskets and go up in the hills that are overlooking it, because it was like entertainment that somebody was going to die right there. I just thought that was so odd to me that you would make an event out of it. You're going to the movies or going to a concert.
And here I am bitching about the NFL cheating.
I've thought that many times. I didn't know they did the gallows pole outside. Have you guys done the tour of the prison?
I've done the official one, but during the day.
That's me too.
I haven't, and I feel.
Are you serious,
Two things that I'm ashamed of is I lived in Boise for 7 years, never went to a BSU game. That's inexcusable, and then never went to the penitentiary. I'm mad at myself for both of those things. So
yeah, dude, you need to go if you ever get back out this way, man. It's really interesting, and you can literally see the human rights increase from decade to decade, because they have different little cell blocks, if you will, throughout the decades, and you can see no rights at all. Little bit more, like as the years progress. The term a pot to piss in or whatever. He doesn't have a pot to piss in. Well, that's what their bathroom was, dude. I guess they would put a bucket down there so they could use the facilities, and someone's job was to pull the bucket out of this little hole and get rid of it. So they have these cells that are open, and I went with he's like my brother from another mother. I went with them, and they have this one cell you can go in, and I went in there, and I swear, dude, someone grabbed the back of my leg. Nobody was there, but it was crazy, man. It was crazy, and it could all be in my mind, dude. Right. But it felt like
So this was a state penitentiary, and they do have, during the tours, they have open areas where you can actually walk into a few cells and kind of get a sense of it. But they also have a couple of the, I don't even know what they call them, but the sections of the prison with the cells, blocks, I guess they call, where they are completely closed. You can't go on their second and third tiers or something.
Yeah.
Now, those seem to me a little creepy because they're just, I guess just because they're unused, there's cobwebs all in them. I got to admit, they got the creep factor there for sure.
That's interesting.
They're like, actually, we're housing a few people up there still, so you guys can't go. But
I never thought about that. Like, why are those blocked off?
Exactly. Jeez.
There's one that like I'm too big to even go up the stairs. Like I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get back down if I go up there. So.
They definitely built them smaller back in the day because I think I'm 6'2", and I bonked my head a few times there, just even going in, through a passageway of some sort.
Can you imagine being a taller guy or a bigger guy being put in those conditions? I mean, it's not great for I guess a regular size, or whatever regular size is. I don't know.
So there was a full in the 70s. Apparently, there was like a full on riot there because of the conditions, to where the state police and like maybe even the National Guard came out, and it was like a really big deal. You can definitely Google this stuff, and I guess that's the reason why it's just not. They didn't have the money to keep it going, and it just wasn't worth it. And now it's a place if you're touristy, you can go to it. It's kind of fun. Honestly, as a photographer, the thing is built of I guess basalt blocks or something that are taken from the foothills, and it's really nice warm stone that actually looks really great in pictures. So a lot of photographers. It sounds weird, but hey, let's meet down at the penitentiary for your photo shoot. But I mean, it's nice light down there and nice blocks. Yeah,
and then you have the botanical gardens right next door that I think they took care of, right?
Those are still going. There's small outdoor. They call it Outlaw Field or something, right?
Yeah.
Or something. And it's taking care of its small little intimate venue. Like I know James Taylor was there, and everybody said it was like sitting in his living room or in his backyard, and he's playing guitar for you. That's how close and intimate you felt with the.
I know Willie Nelson, I think, goes there too. Like passes the doobie around there. I'm just kidding.
Not legal in Idaho yet.
Yeah.
We are surrounded by sinful states, so maybe it'll happen one day. I don't know.
I feel like if federal opens it up, I don't think Idaho's gonna cave. Like I don't know how that would happen.
Well, I think, and I'm not positive, but I think Utah is actually more progressive on the marijuana front right now than we are, which is shocking to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
interesting. Geez.
So all that being said, they do have these special nights where you can do these tours with like the ghost hunter type thing, and you can go through this old creepy penitentiary at night.
That'd be cool.
And I've never done it, and it sounds like you haven't either. But it sounds like it'd be really cool experience.
Yeah.
The Boise Little Theater also, I know they did the ghost hunter thing. When I made the movie Gray Area, one of the crew members, that's what he did. He was part of the Idaho Ghost Hunters program or whatever. I guess it's a group of people, and they did the little theater, and it was I think it was on Channel 7 News that they worked with them or had them on there also.
I think there's a couple ghost hunter troops, so to speak, that have gone through the penitentiary and got some. I think I remember watching Ghost Adventures, not to plug them, but they were up there for a little while, and I think they went through and captured some kind of. I think it was EVPs or something, or voices and other things. But that place is very echoey. Like, I mean, I got to kind of look at it from a, I got to be the contrarian, of course. But it's very echoey too. So literally, somebody yelling in the foothills, could like bounce off in there and maybe become a voice or something.
Right.
There's all kinds of. It's very open in that way.
It's funny you brought up, the shows us being on, and I remember watching X-Files, and they had the Mountain Home Air Force Base.
Yeah,
even though it wasn't the Mountain Home Air Force Base. I saw an episode.
I think there's a few of them where it's based in Idaho. But yeah, Patty and I were really getting into it we got into X-Files when we were moving out of Idaho. Actually, we were really starting to get into watching the X-Files, and there were a few episodes that I think that were based in Idaho, and I remember one with the Mountain Home Air Force Base. So I was like, Randy, that
X-Files touched on a lot of different subjects too. Like, I mean, yes, they're aliens, but they touched on a lot of different kind of different things, like myths from back in the day and everything. I just,
Yeah, some of the shows were like total outliers. Like, it was like, that doesn't even really fit with the rest of their storyline. Like
Right.
all of a sudden, it was just a totally different episode.
Yeah.
But some are like just creepy. Like they still stick with me. I'm like, oh, it's like X-Files, or not X-Files. The Twilight Zone. Like some of those Twilight Zone shows just still
those ones
stay in your
trip me
head.
out. I mean, I haven't seen. Maybe I watched Twilight Zone before I was supposed to, because I think I watched it as a little kid, and some of those things scared the crap out of me. But maybe now if I watched them, I'd take it a little easier. But I remember those scaring me.
I think they're thought provoking,
Yeah.
man. And more so, I think the original ones than like, because they tried to redo them in the 80s and stuff like that, and it just wasn't the same.
Maybe that's the
but
ones I was
think
watching.
The original.
I don't even remember which one.
I think something about the old black and white.
Oh yeah, okay. So the ones I was watching were black and white.
I like that you thought that the 80s were black
Yeah,
and
no.
white.
Good Lord.
That's not what I was saying. No, I think the one that
When did the world become color? Says Damien.
I read a story where a kid actually asked his teacher that, like, were you live back when everything was black and white? And the teacher's like, what? What?
So you were born in what? In what year were you born?
69.
Oh, I meant Damien. Sorry.
sorry. Yeah.
You can't see me looking at Damien.
94.
94. So I graduated in
Holy moly.
95.
Yep. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm the
I was
baby.
born in 77.
I'm the baby. I think
Okay.
most of our guests have been older than me, and I think a lot of my friends are older than me too. Typically,
Well, you get a perspective from everybody, right?
Yep.
You know, I mean, like,
absolutely.
because I'm going to have a different worldview than everybody about all these different things. And I have to admit, I've been more skeptical as I got older, because
Right.
now I kind of look everything with a, like a tilted head, like a, really?
right?
Yeah.
But these myths, like what X-Files, like what you're talking about, they put a lot of different myths and things, from back in the day. Those came from somewhere, but where do they come from? Did people actually see like a winged dragon thing or whatever, or did they, or for instance, the Greek, did they really just not understand where lightning came from, or was there really some god up on the mountain throwing lightning bolts down? I just, you know what I mean? So it might be a misunderstanding of where stuff comes from. I notice that as we expand science in general, and have better tools, those gaps, so, get a little smaller. You know what I mean? Do we still understand everything? No. I mean, I don't even know if we ever will understand everything. I have trouble, at least at 53, shoving a supernatural thing into those gaps. I think there's actually a term for it called God of the Gaps, but shoving God or a supernatural ghost or something in there, whereas it could be just something we don't get
Right.
yet or can't measure yet.
Right.
Maybe 50 years or 100 years in the future, they're going to think we're really silly,
Right.
for
It
doing
could be
some of the.
interesting. Something was brought up earlier, and it brought to mind Interstellar. Have you guys seen the movie Interstellar?
Sure.
Okay, so at the end, the Tesseract was brought up, or it was us that did it. It was like a fourth dimensional version of us that had set up this 3-dimensional Tesseract. And sometimes I kind of think, well, what if there is something like that that's, what we think of as supernatural or whatever is just a whole nother dimension that we don't understand or don't even know anything about. Like the glasses or the wedding ring or whatever, or, maybe this is just another version of our own selves. Like Holly, on the Holly episode, she had talked about how she will go in her mind when she's feeling stressed, and she'll talk to a bigger version of herself, or an older version, more wiser version of herself. And that kind of popped in my head too. Like, what if this version exists, and what we think of as an otherworldly thing is actually nothing more than ourselves in a dimension that we don't understand.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about the description of what people have described different aliens, for instance, I mean, the Greys, as they call them, right? Not to totally get back on that, but if we were traveling through interstellar space, they have the perfect bodies to do that. It doesn't seem like they eat or have any kind of digestion issues. So I don't know how they nourish themselves, but I mean, it doesn't seem like that. If they've really grown technology-wise, it makes sense. They have these big bulbous heads with huge, as we know, every time your head gets bigger, then your brain gets bigger, so you have more computing thought. But you
I
don't
must
need
be the most intelligent person in the world.
You're not even going to be able to fit through the doorway, Randy. But it makes sense that we would have these spindly bodies, right? That don't, because you don't need the physical stuff anymore. You can even talk to somebody, as some people that have supposedly been brought on ships say that they're communicated through telepathic, and so you don't even need a mouth to communicate. You can just think the thoughts and it just, is that us in the future? Are we time travelers coming back trying to write history, or are we going to mess with that? There's a different terms for it, but there's like a grandfather complex or paradox, I think they call it, where if you go back in the past and you kill your grandfather, then how are you born? Kind of thing.
Which Futurama did a great thing on that. Have you seen that?
No. Futurama does a great everything, though.
They do. So spoiler alert again, but they go back to the Roswell incident on accident because Fry microwaved popcorn.
I haven't seen this one.
Oh man, I'm gonna totally ruin it for you. But anyways, they go back to the Roswell there, and they are the Roswell. They're the craft that crashed, and Zoidberg is the alien that they were doing the autopsy on. But anyways, Fry finds out that his grandpa's on the base there, and he's like, "Oh, I need to protect my grandpa, so he doesn't die, so I don't exist." So everything that goes on, he like blows out of proportion in his head to try to protect his grandpa. So he takes his grandpa out to this house just way off, way out of the area, so he doesn't get hurt by anything. Well, it turns out it's a nuclear testing site. And his grandpa gets blown up in this nuclear bomb test, and but he's still alive. And so he's like, oh, maybe my grandpa wasn't really my grandpa. And he consoles his grandma, and his grandma's attracted to him.
Oh no! No.
So he ends up becoming his own grandpa. So it's like the writers, they knew about the grandpa paradox. Like because I've heard that they were like very intelligent. Some of the writers on that show, or creators of that show, were very intelligent people, and so they would mess with these things that we talk about, But anyways, it was really interesting, and I don't even know where you were going with that. Sorry, but the grandpa paradox, but it just reminded me of that episode. Sorry.
So I mean, if they're coming back, or even if a ghost is coming back, like what you're talking about, like maybe some entity goes, they can't find those glasses. Let me put them in a really obvious place that you think you've looked 50 times, and then now suddenly they're there. Or I don't know if you remember the Sixth Sense movie where there's like a butterfly clip or something, and then the kid says, Grandma says she's sorry for keeps taking the butterfly clip. She just likes it a lot. See what I mean? And then she keeps thinking that it's taken. That's a kind of it. Did you look over it 100 times, or did somebody really move it?
Right. I know that I want to believe. I want to believe in it all. So, but I don't. I feel like some of the things you said made me feel like we kind of look at things as similar. Like we're so intrigued by all of this stuff, but the skeptic in us keeps us from grasping any of it. But I just I want to believe in it all. Like I have people that have told me that they've seen my mom, because my mom passed away in 2011. Like the moms came to visit them, and I get jealous. I'm like, well, why hasn't she visited me? It really bugs me. But I've never seen a ghost in my life, even though I have so many family members and whatnot that have. I've never seen it, and I'm jealous, and I want to. Not that I want some evil ghost hanging around my house.
Well, I think the thought of an after, because it's the great unknown, the great beyond, as REM would say, the great beyond.
That's actually what popped in my head.
We don't know, and it does feel good to think that maybe they're in a better place or whatever. I mean, I think that us not knowing where we go beyond that, if there is a beyond even, makes us grab on to these kind of things. And that's where I think religion makes people feel better. You always hear about these kind of stories, but it just doesn't work for people that are, I won't even say atheists, but just non-believers. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched the Pat Tillman documentary. I think it's just called the Pat Tillman story. He was, of course, the NFL player that joined right after 9/11. He quit his NFL career and he joined the military. And actually, kind of it appears he joined with his younger brother, and he got disillusioned with what they were doing over there. It didn't feel like the big rah-rah moment when he first joined, apparently. And he was actually killed by friendly fire, but the government kind of made it sound like he was this hero, and they kind of covered it up. And I think they assumed that the family would go, well, he's in a better place. We can just say he's in a better place, and they're going to move on because they're good Christian families or whatever. And they were having none of that. They missed their son, and they felt like he had passed away. If you want to look at some, I mean, I recommend the entire documentary, but if you want to just look up on YouTube the eulogy that his youngest brother puts on, he goes up there and he does thank. Of course, they made a spectacle out of his funeral there in Arizona. John McCain went up there. I think. Arnold Schwarzenegger's wife came and spoke, and they all did these platitudes of, he's looking down on you right now and so proud of, this kind of stuff.
Right. And
the brother went up there and basically was really honest. He just goes, hey, by the way, there was nice words that everybody said, but my brother wasn't really religious, so he would just say he's effing dead. So, and right there on media, live camera, everybody was like, whoa. So They go, appreciate it, but he would just say he's dead.
Wow.
And I recommend the documentary. It's probably an hour and a half or something, but wow,
Right.
it's quite good, and it really shows the tenacity of a family that is not willing to just shush and think that their family member is in a better place or a spirit looking down on them. They just miss their son and want to know the truth.
Right.
Right.
Pretty good documentary. Yeah.
Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah, I might have to check that out. Yeah. I don't know, man. I just find it all intriguing. I feel like we could go on for just days and days, though, talking about a lot of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a deep subject that it'd be interesting if you guys got on an actual like a ghost hunter of some sort that uses. I'd love to watch one and listen to one about like the tools that he uses and how he trusts those tools. Because I know that they do EVPs and then they must import them into some kind of because a lot of times they have to enhance the sound. And I'm wondering, are we hearing something in the white noise, or is it? Right. Because some stuff I hear is clear as a bell, and I'm like, oh my god, that sounded really weird. But for instance, they one of the tools that they use for ghost hunting is one that apparently revolves very quickly around radio stations, but so quick that it could never pick up a whole word, apparently. But it does, when you're listening to it, pick up whole words, meaning like through the white noise, you end up hearing like, I'm here or whatever. And I don't know. Because it's technology and a man made it. I'm a little leery about that. But I mean, I'd be interesting to hear and see what their tools are, why they trust them. And is it just shadow play? Because I got to admit, if I went into some sanitarium in Illinois and I was there till 3 a.m, the creep factor inside my lizard brain would be freaking out.
Right.
I'd be interested to see the tools and why they trust them. I guess
that reminds me of that movie with Michael Keaton, White Noise. Did you ever see that?
Oh, long time ago.
Yeah, where his wife
fascinated by EVPs or something. Yeah.
His wife was communicating to him through the TV. Through the white noise on the TV, so he became like obsessed. I need to watch that again. Actually, it's been years, but I remember I really
that was Michael Keaton, huh? I wouldn't have remembered that it was even him. Yeah.
That's the only reason. So I googled it and I put Michael Keaton in. Came out in 2005. But yeah, he got like obsessed in it, and of course they had to storify him. Even there had to be a bad guy and all that stuff to make it interesting.
Doesn't make a good movie if there's not
exactly. You got to have
evilness to it or something.
Yeah. But that being said, is there something to that? And like earlier you talked about, and I forgot the correct term for it, but about the energy can't be destroyed or created or whatever. It just is. And it does make you really think, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, even, I don't know. I know you've listened to this podcast, so you've heard all this before. But just to me, like our dreams and all that, is that energy? Yeah, I don't know. There's just so many things that I want the answers. I want the truth. You know, you
Yeah.
can't handle the truth type
And
thing.
it's elusive truth, you know, so it's hard to, you know, like I said, if somebody wants to put it under a science microscope, it's tough to do that with some of this stuff. So I just, that's why I tend to not believe it wholeheartedly. I think it's interesting. I think these shows are kind of interesting. I'll watch them, but again, I always try to watch them with a bit of doubt. I just want to be the skeptic that's asking some questions to counter the points, basically. But it is interesting. I mean, it's very, very interesting. If energy is transferred, that's a neat feeling to think that you're going to be transferred to something else. Now, if I got transferred into a goat or something, maybe not as interesting, right? I mean, all of a sudden you find yourself into some animal that you don't want to be in or something.
It might be the best life ever, right? Like, you know, because I think it's, and I don't know what culture it is, so I'm not even going to try to guess. But there's certain cultures that believe that, you know, even this cup has a soul, and you know, what kind of life would that be? But would it be the same type of life? Like, we look at life how from our perspective, you know, it might be a totally different perspective. It might be, you know, maybe even the atoms that create this cup might have its
I
own.
think the natives here especially in the United States, the indigenous people definitely believe that, like, for instance, rocks had energy and the trees had energy, and you know, I mean, they were created. I think that the properties of, say, granite, for instance, are really, you know, strong. So I mean, that's where it becomes a stretch, right? If somebody is, let's say there is a massive slaughter of some people on granite, does the energy of that slaughter get transferred to the granite, or does it, see what I mean? Like, and there's a lot of places around the United States. I know there's a couple here, even in Idaho, one's called like Massacre Rocks or something, or, you know, and all these different, you know, type of things where you're thinking like, wow, if I went there and just camped there, would some type of energy come out, or would a negative energy of people passing away that was transferred into something or just remains there? I just, you know, I don't know, because you're out in the middle of, you know, nature. So
yeah, I've never actually seen a ghost, but there was, after my mom passed there again, I had gone into I left my bedroom. And I always kept a chair right next to my door where I meditated. And one day I go into my bedroom, and the door is like jarred, locked. Like the door, the chair that was next to my door was underneath the doorknob, like you see in movies. Like someone had tried to keep me out of the bedroom. And so I you know, was able to somehow get into the room, but there was like no way that could have happened, because the only way someone could have did that is if they climbed in my window, jarred my door, climbed out the window, shut the window. And I always wondered, is there a reason why that happened? And I did have a coat on the back of my bedroom door, but the coat was like that far above the chair, so it couldn't have like accidentally grabbed it and pulled it when I shut the door. So it's like things like that. It's like, was there, you know, is there some kind of an energy that I wasn't supposed to be in that room, you know, and it was trying to keep me out. So I don't know. There's just, I really, like I said, I wanted to see things, but maybe that's just not my thing. Yeah. Maybe I don't have that.
Well, I think when they've talked about these dimensions that can supposedly cross over, that's another thing too. Are these energy dimensions like crossing over? Like, are aliens an interdimensional traveler, or is our energy, when it leaves the body, a soul? Do they go into another dimension that can sometimes cross over into our plane of existence? That's fascinating to me. I don't know if any of it's true, but I mean, it's fascinating to me that something could even for an instant, again, with that loop, right, that we were talking about earlier, where it just gets over and over and over. Is that some kind of a glitch in the matrix, so to speak, that is just looping dimensionally over and over and over? Weird.
Or the question is, are we those aliens?
Yeah. Are we them?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what intrigues me.
Is our grandmother going to fall in love with us?
It's terrible.
Oh my gosh, that was a weird one.
It's freaking hilarious.
I'm gonna be like Googling that episode now. I gotta watch that episode.
It's so hilarious, dude. You know, the funny thing is, I'm a fan of the show just because my dad loves it. But it was never a show I really liked. But I love the things that Fry says. They're just so off the wall. just unintelligent. They're so unintelligent. They're hilarious. Like, and
that's why you're friends with me, Randy.
anyways, yeah, exactly. That's why I keep Damien around.
Exactly.
But so thank you so much, Julian, man. Was there anything you wanted to go over that maybe we haven't asked you about?
No, I think we covered a lot of. I know we wanted to have a definitely a focus on the alien and supernatural, but I think it was important to actually delve into at least the belief side. I think you guys already know what your beliefs are, and you probably expressed that many times on the podcast as I've listened to it. But the neat part about that is it can be ever changing too. To me, if somebody comes up with something that is believable, that I can change my mind, I'm always willing to have that open mind and look at it. And that's why I can't necessarily write off aliens or write off ghosts, but I will be skeptical of these things until one lands on my house, I guess. I don't know. Right. I mean, until I have a story to tell. Right.
Same. And then it's like, well, would I accept it, or would my brain think of some other reason why that happened? Like, maybe I just
depends on if you got probed or not.
Well, and even then, I just had a sigmoidoscope yesterday, so
exactly.
So earlier you brought up you're a photographer. Yeah. Do you have like a business or something that
I do? It's Jenkins Photography here in Meridian, Idaho. That's a suburb of Boise here, and it's jenkinsphoto.com if anybody wants to go and they know anybody. I do photograph just about everything, but I do focus in primarily on weddings. I have a journalism background, photojournalism background, where I worked for newspapers, and I think wedding photography ended up being a really natural transition because you're documenting it the best you can without being intrusive. And plus, they're really tough to photograph. A lot of people go into that thinking, well, it's just an event. But here's the thing is it's a once-in-a-lifetime event that you can't mess up. And that makes it very nerve-wracking for some people. So I think that's the niche that at least works for me. But I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you have any photography buffs out there that want to talk about it. I've always wanted to capture a ghost, by the way, on with my camera. I've just never been in the position to do so, which is why when I was talking about earlier about the ghost hunters thing, I would definitely bring my gear to see if there's something that can be captured. Yeah.
Well, and the real kicker is maybe you have. You just haven't realized it.
Maybe. Yeah. Hey, if they look like regular people in the background, how would I even know? Yeah. Right? You know, like the Sixth Sense thing. They think they don't know they're dead. Right? They're just walking around thinking they're normal people. Right.
You know what's interesting? There was a part in the Sixth Sense where it was showing every picture that I think his name was Cole, the kid, was in. There was like these little white blotches that would be on the film. And when I worked at a bowling alley when I was 18 years old, the manager there, every picture of her that was in that bowling alley, and this is back in the film days, definitely they weren't digitally altered is what I'm trying to get at. Every picture of her had these white blotches, and supposedly the story was that there used to be a person that would go there that was in love with her, and he supposedly passed away, and that's why. But I saw the photos. I mean, there was multiple photos of her with these little white blotches that were in the photo.
Interesting.
I would definitely be skeptical just from a photography standpoint. At least I know the lenses can do, depending on what lens you're using, and light can definitely play tricks. But if it's across every photo ever taken of her, especially in a particular building or whatever, and maybe other ones outside the building are normal, I got to admit that would lay a little heavier on my mind. Going like, okay, was it the same camera? Is this any picture that anybody takes with any camera happens to come out with that? Because the chances of that, a lens flare or something like that, going in multiple cameras, I would think is rare.
Right.
Yeah. And she did wear glasses, and maybe that played a part. Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, by the way, speaking of glasses, anybody out there that's considering getting new glasses soon, when they ask you to get the reflective coating on there and you're like, I don't really need that. Yeah, you do.
Oh, yeah.
You definitely do, because every photo of you where a flash goes off will have a bright, explosion in your eyes. So definitely get the reflective coating thing. I don't know why it's like an extra $30 or $40. Just do it.
Yeah.
Right. There's a good plug for the glasses manufacturers.
Speaking of plugs, I wanted to go back into giving your photography a plug, Julian. Julian has done work for my family in the past. I don't know if you're still doing family photography, but we had family photos. I think it was like in 2018 or 2019 was before the
Yeah.
pandemic, pre-pandemic. That's how we time code things now.
Yeah.
Anyway, and you did a great job. So I'm very happy with that. So
Thank you.
No problem.
Now his family, he has quite a big family for people that don't know, and it was he was apologizing throughout the whole shoot, saying, "I know it's like wrangling cats. I'm sorry," and but those kind of things do happen. And kids, I always try to let kids be kids, you know, and if you can capture them more in their natural habitat,
element.
so to speak, if you're forcing them to do certain poses, they tend to buck against you. But if you just kind of let them hold a stick or do something, you're going to capture a much more realistic photo of that. So it's funny you say that about everything talking about the pre-pandemic era, because my youngest daughter, her name is Cambria, so we refer to anything that happened before she was born, which is 12 years ago, as the pre-Cambria era.
That's awesome.
And it's kind of a little science joke that we love to do. So
That almost sounds bibiblical.
Yeah.
Pre-Cambria.
Cambria sounds really
The
good.
land was.
it was a wasteland before she came.
That's awesome. All right,
Well,
guys.
listen, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Julian. We
Thank
great
you,
discussion.
man.
Yep.
And
It's been really intriguing. Like always, man. I just want to know more, but I know we can't go on and on and on. But maybe we can have you if you want in the future again to kind of continue on with stuff. So.
definitely do
All right.
2 episodes for sure.
Love to.
Well, thanks to our listeners for hanging in there with us, and I thought this was a really intriguing, really interesting episode, going over 3 different subjects. So thank you again, Julian, and for those who want to get in contact with us, email us at contact@notupfordebate.com. That's the number 4. Also visit our website, notupfordebate.com. Again, the number 4. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram. With the same name, notupfordebate.com. And thanks for joining us today, guys.
Yeah.
Have a good
Thanks.
one.